Now, the first item on today's order paper is questions addressed to the Deputy President. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose a supplementary question. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, amongst others, has been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the Deputy President, we will proceed to the next question on the question paper. Members asking supplementary questions or raising points of order may remain seated when doing so. The first question has been asked by the Honorable S. Kwahube, the Honorable the Deputy President. I'm sorry, Deputy President. Mukhalipi, Honorable Mukhalipi, on the virtual platform, you have your hand up.
Yes, Speaker, there is a very terrible noise coming from there. I think the IT must check because we couldn't hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. IT, will you please check that? Honorable Deputy President. Deputy President, you may take your seat whilst we are checking. IT, we are given 2 minutes to check. May we proceed? Honorable Mkhalipi, can you hear me now?
Yes, Speaker, we hear you, but the noise is still there. Maybe they can work on it.
The noise?
Yeah, there's a terrible feedback coming from that. Yes.
Honorable members, IT, is everything okay at the back? May we proceed now? Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Kongubele. You had your hand up? Okay. It seems, honorable members, we are okay now. We proceed. Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. According to the President's response, ministers and deputy ministers have signed performance agreements. The President appoints the Deputy President and ministers and delegates responsibilities to them and has the power to remove them, as stated in Section 91, subsection 2 of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, the performance agreements are meant to enable the President and the respective ministers and deputy ministers to effectively evaluate the assigned responsibility and to identify areas of concern. The current system is not determined to provide for the signing of performance agreement between the president and the deputy president, whom you know very well is appointed to assist the president in the execution of the functions of government in accordance with section 991, subsection 5 of the Constitution. However, the work of the deputy president is evaluated against the responsibility that have been delegated by the presidents from time to time. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
First supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Schalkwyk from the chamber.
Deputy President, performance agreements of ministers are meant to gauge and assess their performance within their portfolios, as you have alluded to in your response. But in order for these to be effective, continuous assessment must be done so that non-performing members of the executive can be removed from their positions. These assessments must be made public for transparency, but this does not seem to be the case, since clearly the commitment to have this done since 2019 was mere publicity stunt. In addition to this, the key functions, as you've stated, as the Deputy President and the President, you are to lead the country in the interest of national unity in accordance with the Constitution and the law. So based on the constitutional responsibility that the two of you have, would you agree that the admission by the President that millions of dollars on his private property that were stolen and not reported to the criminal justice system casts doubt on his ability to uphold the rule of law, which is his responsibility and yours, which is central to your role, and his ability to manage the cabinet?
Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Well, correctly said that the performance agreements that we sign between the president and the ministers, deputy ministers, are meant to evaluate performance. And of course, the outcome of that evaluation is communicated to the relevant minister and the relevant deputy minister. So the president does that from time to time. I've never seen an incident where the president will do it public. It will be between the president and the respective minister after that performance assessment. The question that you are raising now about the developments of the issues around the farm robbery in the president's place, I think that has been reported to the police, and I take it that we should allow the respective law enforcement agencies to investigate without our interference, and finally made their investigation known. If they want to charge the president, they will do so at the proper time. So I think we should allow that process to unfold. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deputy President. Order. 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 Honorable Kwakube. Honorable Kwakube. If I may raise this matter. No. Will you please listen? If I may raise this matter. Your follow-up question had absolutely nothing to do with the question you initially raised with the Deputy President. I just wish to draw your attention to that. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable F.A. Masiko through the virtual platform. Yes?
Speaker,
Thank you very much, Speaker. And thank you.
What you've just referred to. If one casts their eye to the Guide to Procedure for 2004, page 196, 1.3, it's very clear on what the scope of questions can be asked to the president and to the deputy president. And it is matters that the individual is responsible for or delegated to. Now, it's very clear that the Honorable Gwarube's follow-up was a keen part of what the president should or should not be doing with respect to performance agreements. And that if there is a question over his integrity or what has or hasn't happened in relation to the incident at his farm, it cast doubt on his ability to do that job. So the follow-up had absolutely everything to do with the original question, as in his line with the guide to procedure.
Thank you. Honorable Zakute.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the rules of the House are clear. A follow-up question must come out from the original question. So we cannot, as these members of parliament, sneak in something that is not on the on the original question. So the honorable member knows the rules better. She's the deputy chief whip of the opposition. So we cannot be opportunistic about bringing other things that are not necessarily in that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Honorable member, will you please take your seat? I did not recognize you. Take your seat. I have not recognized you. Will you please now lower your hand as I address you? Rule 142(6) says a supplementary question must arise directly from the original question and the reply given thereto, and may not constitute a new question. That is the rule, and I close that matter. Now, the Honorable, the Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, I'm waiting for the next follow-up questions.
The next follow-up questions will be from Honorable F.A. Masigo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Deputy President, for your response. Deputy President, in line with the Constitution of the Republic, the President has assigned the Deputy President delegated responsibilities for 2019-2024 term of government. This mainly includes providing political leadership as well as to ensure coordination. How does the Deputy President ensure that the institutions which are part of his delegated responsibilities implement their programs in accordance with their mandate? Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think the honorable member will appreciate the fact that all the institutions and the structures that we are coordinating, they've got their own terms of reference in terms of what they must do, what they must perform. Ours, as the Office of the Deputy President, is just to coordinate the activities so that we achieve the desired goals speedily and ensure that there's effective service delivery from time to time. And after doing our work of coordinating the different departments and institutions, we report back to Cabinet about our activities. Thank you very much.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable OMC Maudwe through the virtual platform.
Thank you, Speaker. It's Mim Kalipi on behalf of Maudwe.
Proceed.
Deputy President, while the Constitution indicates that the functions of the Deputy President are determined by the President, Section 90 of the Constitution provides that should the President be unable to perform his duties for any reason, the Deputy President must be first in line to assume the responsibilities assigned to the president by the Constitution. Taking into account with the latest development of the difficult criminal clouds hanging over the president now, relating to allegations of money laundering, will you be ready to assume the responsibilities should he resign as provided for in the Constitution in relation to this criminal cloud hanging over the president's head? Will you attempt to convince him that staying in the office is not in the country's interest? Thank you very much, Speaker.
The Honorable the Deputy
No idea
President.
what the problem is.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I don't think we have reached that point. I don't think we have reached any point that seeks to say the president must step down. All I know is that a case has been opened and we've allowed the different institutions of our country to investigate and make a determination. And beyond that, probably a decision will be taken after a determination has been made, of which we can't probably jump the gun and say, this is going to be the determination. Thank you.
Honorable, the last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Nsing through the virtual platform.
I'm here, Madam Speaker. Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, I was a bit confused by the question in the first instance, because the question asked whether you signed an agreement with the Deputy President, performance agreement, and the answer to that is no.
Yes.
You do not sign an agreement. It's the ministers and deputy ministers that sign. But being second in charge, Honorable Deputy President, I'm sure you must be aware of the methodology that's used to set performance targets for ministers and deputy ministers. Are you aware and do you work with the president in setting these targets? And are you satisfied that most or if not all of them are meeting the targets that have been set for them in their respective departments? Thank you.
Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. From where I'm sitting, I think I'm satisfied because I participate in all the processes. When the president is sitting, talking to individual ministers, I'm also present in that meeting. When the president is talking to individual deputy ministers, I also take part. So my duty is to support the president. So I'm quite aware of all the processes that we have put in place to set these performance agreements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. We proceed. Question 8 has been asked by the Honorable KRJ Mishwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The World Health Assembly agreed at the special session, which was held on the 29th to the 1st of December 2021, to start a process of developing and negotiating a treaty on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. To this end, an intergovernmental negotiating body was set up to lead the negotiation and drafting of the treaty, in consultation with various stakeholders, including member states and civil society organizations. Drawing on the lessons that we have learned from responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, the proposed global pandemic treaty will complement the international health regulations. To this end, the agreement will seek to outline the objectives and fundamental principles necessary for effective collective action to fight against pandemic, address gaps in the current legal framework, and clarify roles and responsibility of states and international organizations, among others. It is envisaged that this global treaty will, among others, enhance surveillance of pandemic risk and alerts, ensure uninterrupted health supplies and services, and effective research and innovation for timely development of vaccines, treatment, and diagnostics, ensure better response mechanisms and implementation, as well as restore trust in the international health system. Currently, the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body is conducting consultation with stakeholders to produce a working draft of the treaty, which is due to be considered at its meeting later this year. The 76th session of the World Health Assembly in 2023 will receive a progress report on the draft treaty, with the plan for the treaty to be adopted in 2024. For South Africa, it is crucial that the treaty is anchored on human rights to ensure equitable access to various available medical solutions in order to improve the health and well-being of all our people, irregardless of their social standing and their geographical location. When it comes to international agreements, Section 231, subsection 1 of the Constitution is clear that the negotiation and signing of all international agreements is the responsibility of the national executive. Parliament will have a role in the ratification of the treaty once concluded. As international agreements become law after being approved by a resolution in both the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. This means that international agreements become national law only upon ratification by Parliament. Therefore, in this regard, it goes without saying that the Minister of Health is enjoined by the Constitution to submit the treaty to Parliament for consideration and approval. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable K.R.J. Mishra from the Chamber.
Thank you, Speaker and Deputy President. Public participation in lawmaking and agreements to any laws which are to be binding to citizens is a fundamental tenet of constitutional democracy that should never be ignored. Any law affecting a country and the right of citizens to self-determination should be subjected to public scrutiny and participation, as well as parliamentary debates, if constitutional democracy is to be preserved. The ACDP is grateful to the 47 African countries led by Botswana that refused to sign the amendments to the international health regulations this past week at the World Health Assembly in Geneva. My question to you, Deputy President, is whether after public participation, where opinions of citizens would have been solicited, you will ensure that a clear mandate is obtained from the National Assembly and given to the Health Minister and his officials not to sign the proposed amendments to the international health regulations, which, among others, would give additional powers to the World Health Organization.
Your question, please, to the Deputy President. Question, please.
Yeah. I'm reading the question now, Speaker.
Yes, proceed.
I said, my question to the Deputy President is whether after public participation where opinions of citizens would have been solicited, he will ensure that a clear mandate is obtained from the National Assembly and given to the Health Minister and his officials not to sign the proposed amendment to the international health regulations, which among others would give additional powers to the World Health Organization to unilaterally decide to impose decisions on nations of the world,
Okay.
thereby undermining their sovereignty.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mishwe.
Thank you.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I think I've answered the question. Honorable Musha, I said the Minister of Health is enjoined by the Constitution. After all the consultation, the negotiations with stakeholders, to finally bring that report to Parliament for consideration and approval. So Parliament will have an opportunity to deliberate on the report, on the proposed treaty, and make amendments where necessary before it becomes law. That's what I said.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable D.L. Muela from the Chamber.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Greetings to the Deputy President and all honorable members. Thank you, Deputy President, for your response, especially on Section 231 of the Constitution of the Republic that provides the negotiating and signing of all international agreements is the responsibility of the national executive. You have well captured that. But further than that, Deputy President, could the Deputy President outline the consideration that are usually made by the members of the executive in general when discussing the international treaties to ensure the advancement of our national interest? Thank you, Honorable Speaker and the Deputy President.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Firstly, as we look at these international treaties, as a country, we consider first our national interests. So, as we discuss, make proposals, we do that in the interest of the country first. And secondly, we do this to deepen our integration into the global community. You'll understand from our past that South Africa has been excluded in these international bodies. So it's important for our participation to deepen our role as a country, our participation. And thirdly, to ensure that we protect the human rights of our people, following the standards that we set worldwide. So we need to set a standard as a country that will assume the standard of the world. If we want to be the best, we must compare ourselves with the best. But all in all, we want to elevate the human rights of our people, noting our past, from where we come from, where these rights were trampled upon by the system that we had to destroy. So moving forward, we need to elevate these rights and protect them. So these are the interests that we take into consideration as we discuss these treaties and take part in these international bodies. Thank you very much.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable M.O. Clark from the Chamber.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Deputy President. Just in terms of my follow-up question, to a certain degree you have answered the clarity I was seeking, but I would like to highlight that clear timeframes is set in terms of the draft treaty when it comes to Parliament, so it doesn't become an open-ended matter. So once that draft document is ready, whether you would set clear timeframes for it to serve to Parliament, so that we don't have the same issue we had during COVID, where there was no transparency during the COVID period and form and corruption was rife and Parliament had no oversight during that period of time. So if you could give me that guarantee, Deputy President, I'll be very happy. Thank you.
Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much. The timetable and the timeframes are set by the World Health Assembly, and they have determined exactly when do they want to conclude this treaty. So member states have been given an opportunity to go and discuss in their states, in their countries, consulting all stakeholders, which I think in the process, you will also be consulted, you will have your own input. But before anything can happen to this treaty, it's going to be brought back to the House for your ratification, for your final approval. Thank you very much.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N.V. Mende through the virtual platform.
Okay, Speaker, I will take it as well. Deputy President, as things stands, there is not even a test of the so-called global pandemic treaty. So the issue should not even arise. What is a concern, however, is the vaccine imperialism that has dominated the global response to the corona pandemic, which first led to Western countries hoarding the vaccine, and secondly, to these countries of delegitimizing any vaccine development from outside. Why has this country not acquired vaccine produced in China and Russia to fight the corona pandemic? Was this due to pressure applied by Western nations who want to monopolize the production and sale of vaccine in the world? Thank you, Speaker.
The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I think the World Health Organization has realized the amount of work that is needed to coordinate any pandemic, any outbreak of any pandemic, now learning from the COVID-19 experience. Therefore, they've decided to put down a proposal of developing this treaty so that in future, we are better placed to manage any pandemic that might arise and ensure that developing communities, developing countries are also catered for, not like what we have seen in this COVID-19 pandemic, where developing countries were the last in the queue in terms of getting their vaccines. In future, we want to avoid this situation so that we are better prepared, that there should be an equitable distribution of these vaccines and ensure a comprehensive response that will benefit even developing nations. I think that is the essence of this treaty. It's just to promote working together and ensure that those that don't have the resources are also catered for. Thank you very much.
Question 9 has been asked by the Honorable A.M. Tseki, the Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The destruction of infrastructure and loss of lives in the floods affected areas calls on us to ensure that as we rebuild, we do that better and differently. We acknowledge that the current spatial distribution patterns and water management systems were not designed to handle several natural disasters as experienced in the affected provinces. This calls for a rigorous redesign of our spatial arrangements and proper maintenance of our drainage systems to prevent it from clogging up. Already, Prior to these unfortunate floods, government through the Department of Water and Sanitation has already started the process to investigate potential impact of projected climate change disasters that are caused by extreme rainfall and tropical cyclones. To this end, government has put in place interventions to post-flood reconstruction of the infrastructure in the affected provinces. A war room by the Department of Water and Sanitation has been established as part of the short-term intervention to assist these communities with water supply and sanitation system. This will address current challenges to communities in the affected areas, whilst essential services are being replaced and repaired. This water and sanitation war room will in the short term ensure the provision of relief measures to vulnerable communities through the hired water tankers for a period of 90 days that complement the supply of water to the affected municipalities, while water services are restored and infrastructure is repaired. Assistance to the affected provinces to implement immediate interventions in order to stabilize water supply and sanitation system. Avail engineering services from the Department of Water and Sanitation, as well as from affected municipalities, to repair or replace essential water and sanitation services infrastructure so that full water supply is returned to normality. The Department of Water and Sanitation has dispatched a full team of multidisciplinary engineers and technical experts to assess and cost the flood damage. The team will also prepare reports for the Department of Water and Sanitation and the National Treasury, which will include a full cost estimate of the damage caused by the flood, so that adequate resources are allocated to the rehabilitation projects. The IMC on water and sanitation will continue to monitor these projects and ensure that political oversight is in place to support coordinated efforts to complete these projects. In the medium to long term, particularly for the purposes of better preparedness in the vulnerable areas, the response will be to invest in climate-proof infrastructure, including climate-sensitive drainage system. Furthermore, municipal infrastructure support agency technical support services to municipalities would ensure that spatial allocation is reshaped, resulting in better access to safer settlements, economic prospects, and long-term infrastructure provision. Most importantly, local government will need to communicate information to populations and communities living in flood-prone areas, as well as provide early warning systems and improve spatial design that is sensitive to environmental conditions in order to build resilience. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked
Honorable
by
Speaker.
the Honorable A.M. Tseki from the chamber.
Honorable Speaker,
Yes, there is a voice. Where are you?
I'm here.
Oh, thank you.
The Honorable Speaker, there are members in the opposition benches who are not wearing masks. Can you please request them to comply to the COVID protocols?
Thank you very much. Queensenjani go. Phela phansi futhi.
Don't be chachara.
Honorable member.
How?
Yes. Honorable Chacha. Honorable Khatebe. Honorable Khatebe. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Mashele is drawing to attention that there are members of the opposition who are not wearing their mask. I'm very happy she's wearing the mask now. Honorable Sheikh Imam was not wearing the mask and it's against the regulations of COVID-19. Please let them do that. And then Honorable McPherson is not a shop steward of the opposition.
Okay.
Cannot interject when the calls of orders are
Okay,
made.
take
Thank
a
you.
seat now. The first supplementary question
On a point of order.
will be asked by the
On a
honorable.
point of order, Madam Speaker.
Point of order.
Madam Speaker, I rise on point of order, point 97. You know, there is a time and a place for a point of order. And the honourable member stood up and actually called Mr. McPherson Chachara. And we have decided that that is an unparliamentary word to use in this house. But I didn't stand up unnecessarily because we have our deputy president standing in front of us. So let's show some respect to the deputy president and not act like children in the house and respect one another. And if you have a problem with one of my members, please let me know and I will sort it out. But the deputy president deserves the respect to answer the questions today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mazoni. Honorable members. Chachara, I don't know, but don't use that term again. Chachara, no. Okay. Honorable Tseki. Honorable Tseki, please proceed.
Yeah. Two wrongs don't make right.
Ask your question.
President. Early warning system are important if we are about to mitigate the unknown impact of climate change, disaster, and our science and innovation entities such as the Space Weather Center, the South African Weather Service, and other institutions have those capabilities. Therefore, drawing from the experience of the recent floods, how will government ensure that affected communities are settled at areas that won't be flood prone and prohibit those who attempt to build in flood prone areas? How will government strengthen its responses capabilities to disaster early warnings, alerts, as this has a major impact in the agility of mitigating the impact? President.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Honorable Member will realize that the second round of the flooding, the provincial government and the municipalities in the area were well prepared. People were evacuated and placed in areas of safety beforehand. I think we need to strengthen those institutions and communications so that we save our people. Going forward, we're going to strengthen our early warning systems and we are able to reach our people in the far-flung areas where there is no network communication. So we're going to try our best to ensure that we save our people. But as we relocate our people to safer places, we're going to do so and ensure that we are not going to rebuild human settlements in areas that are prone to disasters. Care should be taken by both the provincial government as well as the metros and municipalities, so that this cannot repeat itself. And also going forward, as we build our roads, we build our water infrastructure, we should take into consideration that one day there will be floods. So we need to put infrastructure that is better prepared to withstand the weather, the changing weather conditions. Thank you very much.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable L.J. Passon from the chamber.
From virtual, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Deputy President, KwaZulu-Natal is still waiting for Treasury to cough up 1 billion of flood relief funds for the reconstruction of infrastructure promised by President Cyril Ramaphosa 2 months ago. Durban's economy has taken a major blow, and now the eThekwini municipality must borrow 500 million to fix the city's infrastructure that was damaged by the recent floods. The damaged infrastructure has led to the decline in revenue and has a potential of undermining the confidence of current and future investors, undermining the city's growth prospects. eThekwini needs the money to deliver services, but government is not coming to the party, and now ratepayers must pay for government's failure. Deputy President, why must they borrow money? And how are you going to assist the Metro to fix these infrastructure? Thank you, Deputy President.
Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. From what I know, progress that has been made, a number of departments are already intervening in the area. I'm aware of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure in terms of the bridges in the area. I'm aware of the work that is done by the Department of Water and Sanitation. I'm aware of the work that is done by the Department of Transport, just to name a few. But there is a working together between the provincial government as well as National Treasury. The provincial government has been directed to reprioritize its budget. A number of areas like the Department of Health has managed to reprioritize money to go and fix some of the clinics. Departments of Public Works, Roads and Transport managed to reprioritize money. So that work is progressing very well. And National Treasury is working together with the province to identify grants that were meant for the province, and those grants are put aside to support the Metro as well as the municipalities. That's the progress that I can give. But if possible, Speaker, we can give a clear account in terms of all the projects that are undertaken on the ground. Well, I'm aware that there's still communities that are still housed in community halls, city halls, and the Department of Human Settlement, together with the province, are doing everything possible to build houses for those communities. And in a short space of time, they will be resettled to their new homes. Thank you very much.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable T. Briet through the virtual platform.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A great amount of government resources, money and focus will be spent on the flood-stricken areas of the Northwest, Eastern Cape and KZN. The disaster has been devastating, and as such, as much as possible needs to be done to assist. It is, however, well known that this Interministerial Committee on Water and Sanitation has not only been brought into being by these most recent floods. Many commitments, specifically sewage-related, have been made to address and processes started in other municipalities regarding water and sanitation crises that are not in these affected flood areas. How, Honourable Deputy President, will you ensure that these commitments are not left forgotten and these communities left exposed to human rights violations due to the need for water and a healthy environment without sewage pollution? I thank you.
Honourable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Cabinet is getting a progress report from time to time on what is happening on the ground. But I want this House to appreciate the extent of the problem. As we are trying to relocate people, we're trying to find the missing people. So all these things are happening concurrently as we try to fix, as we try to bring some services to the people, we're trying to find the missing people. So it's very hard, but that is not an excuse not to move faster. So we want to promise the people of KZN that government is going to do better, and we are going to up our pace in terms of resolving some of the issues that are confronted by these communities, especially building long-lasting houses for them. We know that they are pulling hard in terms of, housing their families. These temporary places are not good for families. And I'm sure people will appreciate the fact that government is trying everything in its power to ensure that we restore these places to normality, given the difficult financial situations that we find ourselves in. Thank you very much.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable A.M. Sheikh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Deputy President, you say that the infrastructure was not developed for disasters of this nature. But between 1980 and 2010, there were 77 floods in KwaZulu-Natal alone. Now, my question is, and I don't believe money is the only solution to the problems in KwaZulu-Natal. 8 years ago, when I was a councillor there, the water loss was 27%. Today, it's sitting there at 52%. That is how the infrastructure is crumbling. So the question is, if you're going to rely on the same skills, the same expertise, the same people that failed in all these years to ensure that there were proper maintenance for this infrastructure, how are we going to sort the problem out now? Right now, the infrastructure is beyond rehabilitation. It means you have to put new infrastructure, particularly in the water and sanitation sector. Thank you.
Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. In trying to assess the damage that was caused by the floods, we set up a team of engineers to go and assess the situation. And what was wrong with the current infrastructure, what was wrong with the current drainage system. And I'm sure they are putting a report together to say, this is what was wrong. And as you rebuild, you need to redesign better so that you can accommodate flooding and some difficult weather conditions that from time to time may come. So I'm confident that as we move forward, we'll have learned something from this disaster, especially. This one was the worst, and I think we should take some lessons and try and do better. As we build a road, we must know that this area is prone to flooding. As we build a bridge, we must know that this area is prone to flooding. So we need to redesign the way we lay out our infrastructure, we lay out our roads, our buildings. I'm sure you'll have appreciated the seriousness of the situation where a building, a church building, moved. The foundation and everything moved. I don't think those who designed that building had anticipated this problem. So as we go forward, I think we need to change our way of building so that we move with the time. Climate change is here and is real. Thank you very much.
Question number 10 has been asked by the Honorable A.M. Sheikh Imam. The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, we remain committed to ensuring the dignity of every South African, and we will continue to visit every part of the country, including Tsitsikamma, to trigger the necessary development where specific interventions at the level of the presidency are required. For instance, in April 2021, we visited the area and handed over land to the community of Kovi village after a successful land settlement claim. The land has been lost when it was declared part of the Tsitsikamma National Park. Fishing rights, food security, lack of economic prospects, and agricultural support are all issues that communities are facing. Given the land's characteristics, it should be used successfully for commercial and agricultural purposes. The Kovi community food security and livelihood are mainly reliant on coastal resources, and the area offers abundant agricultural and ecotourism potential. As part of our post-settlement assistance, we emphasized the government's focus on agricultural support initiatives to ensure the productive and sustainable use of the land, as well as the provision of critical service delivery infrastructure, such as roads, electricity, water, and sanitation to support economic mobility and improve the life of the community. The national and provincial governments committed to implementing cohesive intervention measures to address some of the difficulties that are faced by the Tsitsikamma communities in accordance with our delegated responsibilities on land reform and agriculture. Specifically exploiting the area's economic potential by also focusing on non-agricultural business like tourism, as well as promoting small business ventures to make the Tsitsikamma village thrive. However, we must agree that limited resources continue to be a significant hindrance to exploring such possibilities. Notwithstanding such hindrances, the following progress has been made since the handover, Honorable Speaker. The Community Property Association collaborated with the National Department of Agriculture and Rural Development and the Department of Agriculture in the province to design the establishment of pastures totaling 50 hectares in order to reintroduce cattle farming in the area. The Department of Social Development has opened a community nutrition and development center which provides foods and daycare services to the community. In collaborations with the Sun Parks, the Kovi CPA has focused on reviving the Honey Bush Tea Project. The Kovi CPA has formed a partnership with a private developer and signed a memorandum of agreement to form a venture for the development of both commonage and allotments. 12.3 million was transferred to the Kovi CPA in consideration of the compensation of land that could not be transferred to the community because it belongs to Sun Park. A follow-up visit to the Tsitsikamma area will be beneficial to assess the development and impact of our post-settlement support. Our visit should focus on the additional support needed to improve the economic prospects for the people surrounding the Tsitsikamma National Park, both provinces in the Eastern Cape side and the Western Cape side. In order for our land reform and rural development program to be successful, we must focus our support and interventions on the integration of our country's rural areas, which must be complemented by agricultural and infrastructural development to ensure sustainable rural communities and livelihoods. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable A.M. Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Deputy President, allow me to thank you for the initiatives you've already put in place. However, many challenges still exist in that area, given the fact that right from Sipsikama right up to just before Port Elizabeth, the levels of poverty are very high. High levels of unemployment in that area, substance abuse and things. But there are still opportunities for like growing of maize, wheat, poultry, farming and things. And I think what the community needs a push, they need some assistance from government to come there to be able to put these initiatives in place and drive these processes forward. There's lots of land available. People are willing to do that. So will you consider then at some stage in free space in your diary that you pay a visit there and try and engage with the communities and see if we can create some further development, given the fact that wheat is a crisis in South Africa with the Russia-Ukraine war? Thank you, Deputy President.
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Department of Agriculture nationally and in both provinces, they are doing very well in trying to support the community that has been given back their land. On the other side, in the Eastern Cape side, you would appreciate the fact that the provincial government has supported that community to upgrade their dairy farms and to ensure that they get some pastures. And they were supported to rebuild some of the infrastructure that was not there, some of the roads that were not there. So we want to thank the Eastern Cape Provincial Government. The Western Cape government has supported the COVID community, and we are going to join the Western Cape Provincial Government in the building of the allotments and the accommodations for tourism. So there are a lot of opportunities available, especially economic activities that are related to the sea, tourism, and all the resources that are in the sea, like your fishing. These people, they feed themselves from day to day from fishing. So they are going to be supported. And I'm sure they are going to be given fishing licenses so that they can fish for productive use. They can open up their businesses. That area that has been resettled to the community is a very prime area for tourism, for agriculture. All we need is to consistently support the communities to make use of that land for their own benefit. Thank you very much.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable S.S. Somyo from the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And, thanks to the Deputy President for giving us information of the ultimate benefit of the communities in that area. I've had a good experience on my driveway towards the Eastern Cape recently, and I went into the area, meeting the community there. They're very excited to have a benefit of that nature. The land itself is pristine. The environment is well kept, virgin, in a sense of how the government have taken to give it over as it is to those communities there is a very good gesture of ensuring that through preservation, our communities could have a taste of the natural environs. The question which remains is to how government generally, led by yourself, would keep the current land use purpose and to the minimum, somewhat keep the disruption on the planned development in as
Thank
far
you,
as the
Honorable
natural
Somio.
environment is concerned. Thank you very much, Deputy President.
The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Well, we are confident that going forward, the land is going to be utilized in a very responsible manner because of the relationship between the people and SANPark. SANPark is helping the community around to preserve certain areas, to preserve certain trees for conservation. But again, SANPark is helping the community around to develop projects that in a way can sustain the environment. Like the project that we've mentioned, this honey tea. This honey tea is going to be grown there under the supervision of SANPark so that the environment is kept up to scratch. It's not destroyed. Again, I'm sure the Department of Tourism would want to come closer to ensure that as we attract tourists in the area, we do that really without destroying the very essence of that environment, the beauty of that environment. Sure, the Department of Agriculture, nationally, and the two provinces will do their agricultural activities, keeping in mind that that area is bordering some conservation areas that must be kept for future generations. Thank you very much.
Before I proceed to invite the third, the honorable member who asked the next supplementary question, I wish to caution honorable members against making long statements. Because you make long statements and you finish your time and then you go over time to ask your questions. Please don't put me in that situation, honorable members. Thank you very much. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable E.N. Tlangwini through the virtual platform.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's me again, Mkhalipi, on behalf of Honorable Tlangwini. Deputy President, last week there was a land tenure summit hosted, which addressed issues relating to access to and tenure to land. Land is the single most important determinant of opportunities for rural people. Deputy President, in 2010, the Constitutional Court struck down the Communal Land Rights Act, CLARA, because it gives more powers to traditional leaders in relation to land in the rural areas. Does your government have plans to revive CLARA type of legislation? If you do, what lesson have you learned from CLARA in relation to rights of rural people to their own land, and how will these people be protected from traditional leaders who sell off pieces of land to commercial enterprises? Thank you, Speaker.
Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The Communal Land Tenure Summit that was held in the main was trying to find a very peaceful and permanent way of dealing with land in our communal areas. Of course, there's a voice from the people living in those communities that they want to own this land. There are traditional councils that also see it very different to say this land must belong to the traditional council. We've got kings and queens that they've got a different view. So we've made proposals to the summit. Now, there are varying options that are available to all of us. And it was quite clear at the end of the summit that we can't have one size that will fit all. Different communities might want a different policy option. Other communities might be suitable with a different policy options. So as we move forward, we are going to present the proposal from that summit, present them to cabinet for further guidance, so that finally we can develop the necessary legislation that will seek to accommodate the tenure system in our communal areas. But going forward, we are going to recognize our traditional leaders and their traditional systems. We're going to recognize our traditional communities with all their customs and values. So we'll find a middle ground and ensure that people can utilize this land productively for their economic activities so that they can better their lives. So that discussion is ongoing, and we're approaching a point where we're going to legislate these policy options. Thank you very much.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable W.M. Thring through the virtual platform.
Thank you, thank you, Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, there are many tsitsikamas dotted and spread throughout South Africa in need of economic development, job creation, and small business development. Areas such as Marinridge, Kuala, Chilinyama, Dassenhoek, Kwandengezi are such areas. The main road leading to these areas, called Milky Way, has been completely destroyed by the floods recently, and trucks and other vehicles having to drive through the residential area of Marion Heights, Marinridge, adding to the economic hardships of the residents, and as well as damaging the road infrastructure. The president of the ACGP, Reverend Dr. Kenneth Meshwe, visited some of these areas. Now, as the leader of government business, Honorable Deputy President, what guarantees or assistance, if any, can you give to the residents of these areas that I mentioned that, like Tsitsikama, are also desperately in need of economic development? Thank you.
Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I think all the Tsitsikamas who are scattered all over, they must go back to their place. We have given them back the land that they must go and utilize. So wherever they are, they must go back. They've got the land now, they've got something that they can work on. But on a serious note, we want to assure that community that would continuously support them until they've reached a point where they are self-sustainable. We're going to assist them with the infrastructure, like I said, the roads inside there, water infrastructure, sanitation. We are going to assist them to till the land. We are going to assist them to keep livestock and to do a number of projects that can define their economic way of life. So support to that community is guaranteed. And I think they have now in the bank, they've got 12.3 million of money that we're paying them for the land that we could not restitute because it's within the park. So they've got money in their hands. They can plan for some of the projects. But of course, the two governments, the Western Cape government and the Eastern Cape government, they've committed to assist. Department of Agriculture and Rural Development is also taking part and assisting these communities to make use of this land. Thank you very much.
Question number 11 has been asked by the Honorable S.T. Maneli. The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, as government, we are cognizant of the negative impact of load shedding on the country's economy and the inconvenience and the hardship it causes to the country. However, load shedding is a last resort lever to protect the system from blackout, which is a total loss of the electricity network. Government has created a regulatory environment that is conducive to opening up the market for alternative power generation. Within the framework of the 2019 Integrated Resource Plan, alternative energy generation measures are being explored and implemented to augment the electricity supply and improve the stability of the grid. Furthermore, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy has issued determinations on the required new generation capacity in concurrence with the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. We must make the point that Eskom's load shedding is not as a result of limited market role for alternative power generation, but mainly as a result of breakdowns encountered from the old and aging power generation infrastructure. An improvement in the reliability and predictability of the coal fleet requires adequate financial resources and generation capacity surplus on the system to execute the required additional reliable maintenance. To achieve this, Eskom is driving the Generation Turnaround Program. As coal-fired units and stations are going to be shut down, it is essential that new generation capacity be added to the grid to ensure energy security. Overall, Honorable Speaker, the country has an immediate need of 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts additional generation capacity with immediate effect. To this end, the following interventions have been implemented. As part of our Just Energy Transition Strategy, Eskom proposed an extra 8,000 megawatts of clean energy projects to be added to the grid over the next 2 to 5 years. This is a mix of greenfield renewable and gas projects, as well as coal power plant repurposing. Government is also considering various changes which will speed up the acquisition of independent power producers and to reduce further red tape. An announcement in this regard will be made once all the necessary tasks have been completed. In addition, Eskom has presented a transmission development plan to meet the country's capacity demands, which calls for the construction of 8,000 kilometers of line in the next 10 years. This project will necessitate substantial funding, which Eskom has proposed as part of the Just Transition financing and the regulatory support for land and servitude acquisition. Eskom has proposed a holistic approach to decarbonization and environmental compliance by accelerating the retirement of aging and unreliable coal plants as part of its commitment to the country's Just Energy Transition Plan. This will be done in a manner that is both socially and environmentally responsible. Coordination across all tiers of government is critical in achieving our just transition, as it will ensure energy supply stability and provide the much needed reprieve from the detrimental effects of load shedding in the future. Honorable Speaker, in accordance with our constitutional and international commitments, we want to reiterate our commitment to establishing a socially inclusive decarbonization growth path that prioritizes environmental sustainability. Climate change is here with us, and it is an existential threat to all of us. And South Africa is committed to assisting in the reduction of global emissions. To this end, the President formed the Presidential Climate Commission, which will advise on the country's climate change response, support a just transition to a low carbon, climate resilient economy and society. The Presidential Climate Commission encourages debate among social partners on these challenges, identifying the type of economy and society we want to attain, and outlining the comprehensive path to get there. The Presidential Commission has created a framework for a just transition, which allows for a discussion of practical concerns such as jobs, local economies, skills, social support, and governance. The framework is based on the country's current body of knowledge, as well as the National Development Plan's vision. Our transition must maintain policy alignment across all levels of government, including the current climate change bill that is before Parliament. As a country, we must guarantee that we implement new infrastructure, technologies, and solutions that allow us to meet the ambient air quality standards, while also safeguarding community members from the negative impact of environmental externalities. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable S.T. Maneli from the chamber.
Yabulela Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Deputy President, for the response. The interventions which are being undertaken will go a long way in ensuring that there are no electricity disruptions to the people and the economy. It is also encouraging to hear about the interventions with regard to just energy transition. My question, however, is what is the level of interest from the independent power producers to take advantage of the opportunities provided by the government through various bid windows to provide additional energy to the grid? Thank you, Deputy President, and thank you, Speaker.
Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The independent power producers are very excited. Of course, they are participating. And to date, they've almost connected 1,800 megawatts to the grid. So gradually, they are coming into the party. Of course, not at the speed that we're expecting to solve our current problems of load shedding, but we can guarantee that the future is going to be better with these independent power producers, renewable energies that are from time to time connected to the grid. All the announcements that have been made by the Minister of Mineral and Resources, allowing all these bid windows to contribute power to the grid, finally, that is going to give us more energy for the future. We are hoping that all those independent power producers who have been given these projects can speed up the development of these projects and connect to the grid, because South Africans, as we speak, need more and more energy. Thank you very much.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable W. Bishop.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair and Honorable Deputy President. I would like to know if we should expect anytime soon a completely deregulated electricity market where the actual, where the smart network is able to calculate the actual availability of power and the demand for electricity at a specific time and calculate a price according to that. So in fact, to remove all market failures out of a regulated market. And I just want to add to that, if we really take the whole question of climate change seriously, one should actually encourage renewables by even subsidizing it if one takes a long-term perspective. But in South Africa, coal is still, in a sense, protected by a regulatory framework that limits the entrance of renewables into the network. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Deputy President. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well, I think as we stand here, I think the market is gradually opening up. Firstly, for renewables, all these independent power producers are now allowed to generate energy and connect it to the grid. We've also allowed municipalities to generate their own energy. Yes, I can say we are opening up this market so that Eskom must not remain a monopoly. And I'm sure down the line, we are going to open for more and more players, like we've done with the private sector businesses that can generate up to 100 megawatts. So yes, we are constantly opening up this market, but in a very responsible manner. Thank you very much.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable NLS Kwangwa through the virtual platform.
Speaker, thank you very much. DP, you are aware of the severe impact of load shedding on the South African economy, which causes loss of output of approximately 700 million rands per day, according to estimates, and also contributes to massive job losses in the country. Now, you'll recall that the shareholder strategic intent outlined government's short to medium term and long-term objectives for Eskom. I want to ask, since this shareholder strategic intent has been adopted a long time ago, whether government does indeed hold Eskom to account to ensure that these objectives which are outlined in the intent, firstly, are implemented, and that secondly, the destruction of Eskom is not linked to an allegation that some of these independent power producers have some politically connected individuals, meaning they have a vested interest in the destruction of Eskom. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Well, the load shedding is a situation that I think is not desirable for this economy. And we understand the frustration that our people are facing on a daily basis as we are going through this load shedding. We've explained a number of times, more or less, the reasons. Of course, South Africans don't want to hear the reasons, they want to hear solutions. But maybe it's important once again to reaffirm the reasons that account for load shedding. We've got a new build infrastructure that has got design effect like Yomedupi and Kusile, which already by now should have given us, they should be operating in full steam, full capacity. But because of the design effects, there are some units in Kusile and Mudipu that are still not functional. That is reducing our capacity. Again, we've got these power plants that have gone beyond their lifespan. We're pushing them very hard, and the maintenance bill has gone high. In order to maintain these power plants, it's becoming more and more expensive for Eskom. Of course, the unplanned breakages in these plants disrupts the plan for Eskom to do proper maintenance that is scheduled. Now, that is why Eskom will announce load shedding in the middle of the night because a certain plant has broken down. This is not according to the planned outages that is planned by Eskom. Be that as it may, the plan that we have put forward in terms of our IRP 2019, we've allowed the different energy alternatives to come into play. In the main, we've allowed renewables. That has been a long journey. From bid window 1, we are now at bid window 5, 6, 7, we continue. But like I said, this is not giving us the energy that we require like now. We're getting it in bits and pieces, and load shedding continues to be with us. But I want to assure South Africans that the plan that we have now will give us reliable energy in a space of 9 months. We're going to pursue these independent power producers to bring their energy into the grid. We're going to allow Eskom to consider putting a plant, a coal-powered plant. Of course, we are aware of the carbon emissions. Maybe we are going to find some technologies that will reduce the emissions, but we're going to use what is available, the abundant coal resources that we have. We're targeting a 1,500 megawatts that we're going to use from coal. But we're also targeting 3,000 from gas to power. Thank you. I think this will be in a position to give us some immediate relief if we act with the speed and urgency that it deserves. Yes, it's not a solution. If people want to hear that load shedding is going to end tonight, it's not something that is going to give us end load shedding tonight. But yes, down the line, there are prospects of ending load shedding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable KJ Minor.
Chairperson, unfortunately, Mr. Marlin is unavailable to ask the question. So I do believe he's asked the better half to do it on his behalf. Deputy President, I'm sure that you would agree that getting more megawatts onto the grid is the #1 priority for South Africa in terms of electricity and energy. One of the challenges that various independent power producers and industry bodies have and have identified is the local content requirements. In fact, ESCOM CEO Andre de Ruyter has agreed and noted that it was driving prices up as well as leading to a shortfall in capacity as local solar panel manufacturers cannot meet demand. Deputy President, in your capacity as leader of government business, will you take steps to ensure that this is protectionist and job-killing requirement is removed and that IPPs and ESCOM are allowed to purchase their equipment and from whatever supplier they choose, whether local or international, and that they meet their requirements? And if you do not agree to that, why don't you? Thank you so much.
Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Well, my role as leader of government business only confine my work in Parliament, not really in government business. We've got Minister Patel, who's responsible to coordinating the business that government does with the private sector. This is really a concern that has been noted that some of the components that these independent power producers need to assemble and get these plants up and going are not readily available, and it takes time to source them, and therefore making it very difficult in terms of the time frame to deliver these projects. Be that as it may, that is going to be work in progress, but there is commitment in terms of those independent power producers to do whatever possible in their powers to ensure that they deliver these projects on time so that this energy can be connected to the grid. We are not relying on them. We are pushing ahead. Like I'm saying, ESCOM must also take a responsibility to enter this renewable space. ESCOM must be able to do solar energy. ESCOM must be able to do wind. This is not restricted. This space is not restricted to independent power producers only. ESCOM can also play in the space. But beyond that, ESCOM can play in the space of gas, as well continue with coal, but ensure that there are technologies that will limit the emissions of carbon from our coal products. Yes, as much as we want to really deal with the frustrations in terms of the supply and demand of all these components that are needed in the renewables, it will depend on the market processes, which we hope business is better placed to push for these components to be delivered on time, depending on the agreements with their suppliers. The situation definitely is going to improve. And finally, we are going to deliver these plants, not at the time when we needed them most, but finally these plants are going to be delivered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Deputy President. The last question has been asked by the Honorable NWA Matsoni. The Honorable Matsoni, Deputy President.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, we have since witnessed an incredible outpouring of solidarity and cooperation from a diverse range of stakeholders, including individuals, organizations, business, and agencies in the aftermath of the floods that resulted in massive loss of lives and livelihoods, destruction of property and infrastructure, displacement of families, particularly in KZN. As government, we want to commend and applaud these cooperative efforts from all the good Samaritans that have donated in kind. Our government's response to this catastrophic calamity is three-pronged, as summarized as follows. Immediate humanitarian relief, ensuring that all the affected people, firstly, are safe and that their basic needs are met wherever they are. Secondly, stabilization and recovery, which includes finding a shelter for these people who have lost their homes and restoring service provision. And finally, the reconstruction and rehabilitation with the focus of building back and building better. The first phase of the three-pronged approach has mostly focused on providing urgent humanitarian relief, ensuring that all affected people are safe and that their basic needs are satisfied. As much as we do that, providing urgent humanitarian relief, we're also proceeding to find the missing people. This has been hindered by the return of our floods in eThekwini municipality and nearby areas over the past 2 weeks. In this case, we want to applaud the Premier and the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government for their efforts to expedite recovery and reconstruction in the affected area. Collaboration of all spheres of government and organs of state continues to improve the situation on the ground, not at the required pace, of course. It is a difficult situation, and we want to appeal for appreciation of the complexity of what we are confronted with. As phase 2 of our intervention, government is making headway with stabilization and recovery actions, including rehousing those who have been displaced and restoring basic services. This is still an early stage. Like I've said before, there are some families that are still housed in city halls and places that are not conducive for a family to live. As previously mentioned, the Department of Water and Sanitation has established a water and sanitation war room to assist the province in the affected areas, particularly eThekwini Metropolitan Municipality, in the restoration of water services and addressing water and infrastructure-related challenges. To this end, water supply restoration has progressed in many regions of eThekwini, with the exception of the Tongati supply system, which remains a major challenge. You might have seen communities very unhappy about that system. This is due to the critical water infrastructure that was badly destroyed. We are advised that the restoration of the Tongati waterworks is expected to take 3 to 6 months to complete. In this regard, we appreciate the intervention being made by the South African National Defence Force. As we are speaking, they are on the ground, especially in providing water to social facilities in the area. This has ensured that schools remain functional and our learners are not adversely affected during this examination season. Our words of appreciation also goes to NGOs and private sector that has lent support to the needy households, especially for the elderly. Since all affected people should be taken care of without losing a single day of their lives without basic necessities, the criticism that the process has been slow, it's expected and it's well placed. However, the severity of the situation necessitates time to fix all this. Even with all the difficulties that we face in the area, we want to appraise this House that affected municipalities and government departments have been conducting technical assessment of the damage and the costs and recommending some short, medium, and long-term measures to address the situation. Last month, the national government received the coordinated response intervention and requested funds for both essential and emergency repairs, as well as long-term solutions to restore normality to the affected areas. National Treasury has issued a directive outlining public management and budgeting systems that will be used in the event of the national disaster to guarantee that services to the impacted communities are not disrupted. Affected provincial departments and municipalities have already begun to the process of reprioritizing their budgets and submitting requests to the National Disaster Management Center for the relocation of or repurposing of funds in conditional grants, focusing primarily on humanitarian relief and emergency repairs of critical infrastructure such as water, waste management, electricity, roads, and some engineering infrastructure, as well as social services such as healthcare facilities. Honorable Chairperson will continue to monitor and assist land identification processes by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure so that we move with the housing initiatives by the Department of Human Development to relocate all the affected communities into safe areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Matsoni from the chamber.
Deputy President, thank you for your answer. And I must say, what you say sounds noble and it sounds very well intentioned. But you have to admit that what we've seen in terms of corruption during COVID and otherwise, we are going to have to keep an extra close eye on what we do with relief measures in KZN. And there are a few things that I've noticed that have really terrified me. And my colleague, Dean McPherson, who is the DA chairperson in KZN, got me some facts that most of the rivers in KZN are being marked red, which means that they are in critical condition and that their E. coli levels are extremely dangerous. Others are orange, which means that E. coli levels are high, and few are given green, which means they're acceptable. Now, the one good thing that we have going is that there are 199 sites that have been identified as emergency shelters, and 65 of these centers have actually been approved for permanent stay structures. Now, we have this task team that is going to KZN, that is going to overlook relief measures. Can we expect that this task team will be given all tender details, cost details, and details about water safety, which in turn make sure that we have human safety, and that you will bring that information to Parliament for us to scrutinize, so that we can make sure that we never ever have a repeat of the corruption that we've seen in the past.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Certainly, we are going to bring information to Parliament. We'll evaluate progress on the ground from time to time. I'm sure you'll also undertake your own oversight visits, but we'll endeavor to provide Parliament with the necessary information. We must assure this House that we are going to try everything in our power to prevent corruption. But remember, as we plan, as we work, there are those that are planning somewhere to steal. So we must be wiser and be faster and be better than them, so that we avoid these public resources to be stolen. We want to assure that we're going to deal with corruption where we find it. Whoever is going to steal government money, public resources, those people are going to be dealt with. As sitting here, because one day we might come back and say, we told you that some people are going to steal money. We're going to try our best and ensure that no money is stolen. We're going to put our risk mitigation measures to ensure that these funds are protected. But where they try to steal, we're going to chase them, we're going to arrest them. So I'm giving this assurance that we're going to work smarter and better to ensure that public resources are safe this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, the Honorable Deputy President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mutambe through the visual platform. Order, honorable members.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. Deputy President, given that we are already experiencing the predicted strong and frequent life-threatening weather events in the form of storms, landslides, floods, droughts, and heat waves, what is the government doing to capacitate those rural municipalities with no tax base, particularly where there are high levels of poverty and vulnerabilities, to have access to smart early warning system, build a more climate and disaster resilient society, and efficient and well-capacitated rapid response system? Thank you so much, House Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much. I think the first and foremost thing that we must take into consideration is how we build our human settlement. This is a message that we have put across our traditional leaders, who at times they continue to allocate pieces of land for people to build and reside. Some of our municipalities under their jurisdiction, they allow people to build and stay anywhere. I think we must try and tighten that situation so that we move away from disaster-prone areas. And before we can create a settlement, we should allow a thorough process of assessment of the area and allow all engineers to come and assess the area and give us a green light before we build a human settlement. But once again, we must be able to communicate with our people in those rural areas in terms of our warning systems, like KZN did in the recent second round floods. I think they did very well after getting the early warning system. They went down to convey this message to our communities, and some people were removed and resettled because we're expecting rain. And this rain only damaged the infrastructure, but people already have been reallocated. So that was a first step in the right direction in terms of warning our people, communicating these messages to forewarn them before the disaster. But of course, we can do better in terms of developing our warning system, strengthening our disaster centers, so that we can communicate and circulate information timelessly in order to prevent loss of life and livelihoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable S.A. Buthelezi through the visual platform.
Thank you, Chairperson. I wish to find out, Deputy President, whether the national government will offer any scheme by which people who had lost their life savings through the destruction of their property can be prioritized through subsidies and apply for loans from government or any other partner institution to rebuild their homes at favorable rates. Thank you, Chairperson.
The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Well, this is a proposal, a suggestion that may well be considered by government. But as of now, we are looking at the displaced people that must be resettled. And if you look at the economic prospects of these people, these are people who can't afford to build their own houses. Now, these people rely solely on the support of government. But there are those who are earning, who are gainfully employed, that might want some subsidies from government. But the people that we're talking about here, I think these are people that are in need, that have lost everything, that are unable to fend for themselves. They rely solely on the government support for their houses, for the belongings that they've lost, in order to return back to normal life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable OMC Mautre.
No, it's me, House Chair Mkalipi. Deputy President, 2 weeks ago, your minister in the presidency, Mondlingo Ngubela, reported that government was still collecting data on the extent of the damage before intervening and helping people affected by floods in KZN. To this day, there are still people missing and thousands more are still housed in community halls. By when will you have a full picture as government of what is going on in KwaZulu-Natal? When will you ensure that everyone who has had their homes destroyed have new homes built for them? Because I'm listening to you, Deputy President, you are saying that one of the things that you are doing is to identify land. Some of those people who lost their homes have their own land, but there is no coordinated program, even from the office of the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal. No one knows what needs to happen to those people. Bahleli nje abazi what needs to happen to them. Can you please, because people are sick and tired of long speeches about their plight because of floods in KZN, can you please tell us what needs to be done now as a way forward in order for us as members of parliament and go back and tell people what will happen now going forward? Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much, House Chair. To the Honorable Member, we really appreciate and understand the sensitivity of this matter. But however, we said in our response that some of the interventions that we're doing are going to happen concurrently. What does that mean? It means we are going to continue still to find the missing people. these communities, some families won't find a closure until such time we find those that are missing. So that will be an ongoing effort on the side of government to help those communities to find their loved ones. Secondly, we need to respond by providing quick services like water. That's why there are water tankers, so that you give people water. As much as you fix the infrastructure, but people need water now. There are these people that have been moved to town halls, city halls, that have been moved from their collapsed structures. These communities and these families cannot stay there forever. In the process, we are rebuilding houses. A few houses have been built. And in terms of the land, suitable land to resettle this process, government has done enough and we've moved very fast. Public Works has identified 4 pieces of land in the area where we can relocate these people. So what I'm trying to say, Honorable Member, is that everything is going to go concurrently. As we search, we provide services, we rebuild. Now, it might happen that some elements of the interventions might lag behind, but it's not that we are doing nothing as government. We said, and we have made an undertaking that we are going to report progress to Parliament in terms of what we have achieved, what is lagging behind, but we must make it an effort, all of us, to try and assist those people there. We must thank business, NGOs that have come into the space to support these families. They've given them blankets, they've given them food. So as we're speaking, these families are still alive, they are looked after, but of course we're worried about shelter, we're worried about the services that they must receive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy President. That concludes questions to the Deputy President.
Thank you.
I thank the Honorable The Secretary will read the first order.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Finance, on Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Levies Bill.
Now recognize the Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party from the chamber.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move that the report be adopted. Thank you.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the second order.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Finance, on Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Levies Administration and Deposit Insurance Premiums Bill.
I now recognize the Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move that the report be adopted by this august House. Thank you.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
House Chair, please note the objection of the DA.
Noted.
House Chairperson, please note the objection of the FF+.
Noted, Honorable Member. Report read to. third and the fourth orders. The secretary will read the third and the fourth orders together. First reading debate, financial sector and deposit insurance levies bill. And second reading debate, financial sector and deposit insurance levies administration and deposit insurance premiums bill. I now invite the minister to the podium. Minister.
House Chair, Honorable House Chair, today we present to you the Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Levies Bill, as amended by the Standing Committee on Finance. House Chair, you will recall the impact of the global financial crisis and the necessity to respond to that challenge, in the sense that systemic risk by the financial sector was not only a challenge to themselves, it was a challenge to the fiscus and the economy in general. For that reason, there has been a global response to supervise banks more intrusively, intensively, and effectively. We have also, as a country, adopted an overarching policy framework entitled, and I quote, "A safer financial sector to serve South Africa better, to regulate the financial sector." In line with that, regulatory institutions were created to support that objective. That led to the transition to what is called the twin peak system of financial sector regulation, and has been necessary in order to achieve more effective regulation. This requires adequate funding and resourcing for the regulators as a final step in the reforms designed by the government and endorsed by this House when it passed the FSR Act. Adequate resource to those institutions will need to be adequately resourced to those institutions. Among them is the Financial Sector Tribunal, the Ombuds Council, the Deposit Insurance Corporation, the Pension Funds Adjudicator, and Ombuds for Financial Service Providers. Government is cognizant of the current economic climate, as well as the adverse socio-economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the financial strain that business and financial customers are under at the moment. It is important, however, to view the proposed levies through the lenses of several mitigating factors that provide clarity as well as context when analyzing the figures. One such factor is that the bill imposes a cost less than most peer economies with comparable size, sophistication, and regulated architecture. Furthermore, the approach in the distribution of the total collected levies is on a proportionate basis, as smaller financial institutions pay less than their larger counterparts who will pay the bulk of the levies, as they would require more regulation given their systematic and complex nature. In addition, government working with stakeholders has taken serious steps to mitigate the cost of those temporarily unable to discharge their obligations. We then mentioned those costs. Mindful of time, Honorable Chairperson, I'm galloping in order to meet your time obligations. I had drafted on a long speech. Honorable Speaker, I conclude with crucial note on the financial sector and deposit insurance levies and deposit insurance premium bill. This bill is a Section 75 bill, not a Section 77 money bill. However, it does have consequences from a funding perspective. As I mentioned before, the Reserve Bank is the designated financial stability and resolution authority in terms of the FSR Act. To equip it with the necessary tools to maintain financial stability, we have established a deposit insurance fund
that will be administered and maintained by the corporation, but entirely funded by the banking industry to estimated amount about 548 million through premium contributions. The major beneficiaries of the scheme are depositors who will be protected in the event of the bank failure. The policy intervention will enable the protection of depositors up to 100,000 per individual and cover 90% of depositors, including the most vulnerable customers. Once again, will delay implementation to allow sufficient time for the industry to make adequate preparations, while the Reserve Bank will absorb the corporation startup funding requirements at no cost to the industry. I therefore, Madam Speaker and honorable members of the House, I thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On time.
Yes,
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next speaker is the Honorable Ma Swanganye, virtually. Honorable Ma Swanganye.
Thank you so much, House Chair. This is the report of the Standing Committee on Finance, on Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Levies Bill, as well as Deposit Insurance Premiums Bill. Honorable House Chair, Deputy President, Chief Whip, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members of the National Assembly, members of the public. The committee processed two bills which are crucial to the running of South Africa's financial regulatory regime, which the Standing Committee on Finance is reporting to the House today. These are the Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Levies Bill and the Financial Sector Deposit Insurance Levies and Deposit Insurance Bill as amended. We shall refer to the former as the Levies Bill and the other as the Levies Administration Bill, or collectively the bills. Both these bills form part of the Twin Peaks financial regulatory regime, which was initiated following the global financial crisis of 2008. South Africa is part of the global village and its citizens. Residents and businesses get impacted upon by significant events taking place in other parts of the world. The Twin Peaks model of financial regulation is as a comprehensive system for regulating the financial sector, representing a radical shift away from fragmented regulation and mitigating the risk of regulatory arbitrage. The FSRA saw the introduction of two main regulatory authorities, which are the Prudential Authority within the South African Reserve Bank and the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, which incorporated the former Financial Services Board. The PA is responsible for the safety and soundness of banks, insurers, and financial conglomerates for or systemically important financial institutions, the SIFIs. The FSCA is responsible for protecting customers of financial firms, ensuring the integrity and efficiency of financial markets, and promoting effective consumer education. The PA and FISCA were both established on the 1st of April, 2018. SARB under the FSRA is responsible for the overall financial stability with a statutory interagency financial stability oversight committee, FSOC, chaired by the governor of the SARB. This entails planning for the worst events and ensuring that there are plans in place to manage systemic failures in the financial system. This includes the introduction of the deposit insurance scheme as a financial safety net. The Levies Bill is the money bill that provides for the imposition of levies on supervised entities in order to fund the operations and functioning of the Prudential Authority, here above referred to as PA. And the FSCA, the Financial Services Tribunal, and Ombud Council, which are all established in terms of the FSRA. It will also fund the Office of the Pension Funds Adjudicator and the Office of the Ombud for Financial Services Providers. The Administration Bill provides for refinements to Chapter 16 of the Financial Sector Regulation Act, which deals with fees and the administration of levies, to ensure that the chapter is appropriately aligned with the Levies Bill and appropriately provides for the administration of levies. It also provides for the imposition of deposit insurance premiums that will finance the deposit insurance fund. The premiums will be imposed on members of the corporation for deposit insurance, which are licensed banks, mutual banks, cooperative banks, and branches of foreign banks which conduct business in South Africa. In 2021, Parliament enacted the Financial Sector Laws Amendment Bill, which established the Corporation for Deposit Insurance and the Deposit Insurance Fund. These, for the first time, will ensure that the depositors are protected in the event of bank failure. The levies and administration bills are the final implementation stage of the country's financial sector regulatory reforms, which introduced the so-called Twin Peaks regulatory architecture. The objectives of financial sector regulation are to ensure a stable, inclusive, and transformed financial sector that is a key driver of economic growth and job creation. The financial sector plays an important role of providing financial products and services to citizens, thus supporting economic activity. The efficient and effective regulation of and supervision of financial institutions and markets minimizes the risk of market failures. A strong system of financial sector regulation ensures the protection of financial customers. In order to achieve all of this, an appropriate funding model in line with the Twin Peaks system is therefore needed to provide for cost of regulation and capacity enhancement. The bills seek to ensure that there is adequate funding and resourcing of regulations and supervisors. The Levies Bill were introduced to the National Assembly by the Minister of Finance on 21st January 2022. The committee was briefed on the bills by National Treasury on the 9th of February 2022. A call for public comments was issued by Parliament. Thereafter, and only written submissions were made. The following organizations made written submissions to the committee: BASA, the Banking Association of South Africa; FIASA, the Joburg Stock Exchange; Masthead, Moonstone, Outsurance, South African Insurance Association, and Wealth Tap. The committee could have, however, benefited more from oral submission by stakeholders. On 11th May 2022, officials of the National Treasury and the affected regulatory bodies responded to the written submissions. As a result of the submissions, a number of amendments were made to the original bills. The National Treasury also reported that before the bills were tabled in Parliament, it undertook extensive consultations with affected stakeholders, including regulatory agencies and industry. The submissions received from the stakeholders focused on technical and substantive issues. Some of these issues were accepted by National Treasury, leading to the technical and substantive amendments detailed in our reports. Most of the substantive policy comments on the Levies Bill focus on what can be referred to as compliance costs, particularly the quantum of levies possible duplication of the levy, and special levy. The special levy will only be for the first 2 years of the levy. It is charged in order to enable the new regulators to cover their setup costs. The levy falls away from year 3 going forward. The Levies Bill further makes provision for granting of exemptions from the payment of all or part of the levy in the circumstances set out in clause 11 of the bill, in order to accommodate entities facing financial hardships. Although these are necessary costs, the committee is concerned that the cost of regulation will be borne disproportionately by the customers, particularly the poor and low-income earners. This is why the committee ordered National Treasury to present to it a socio-economic impact study on the bills before deliberating and adopting them. The direct costs of regulation under the Twin Peaks system after these bills are in force will amount to 1.6 billion per annum in the first year and 1.3 billion currently are the costs. The committee urges for thorough consultation with industry whenever these fees and levies are reviewed. The committee further recommends an independent survey to be conducted to examine the actual pass-on costs of these fees and levies to consumers after the special levy has fallen away in the 3rd year. The estimated impact of these costs on consumers in the first year, if passed on, will amount to less than 50% per month. The National Treasury projected that the total levies will be paid by insurers and banks, account for about 0.3% and 0.2% of their total operating costs, respectively. It further stated that each institution, as a percentage of the total profits generated, will pay 0.8 and 0.4 respectively. Finance is the largest industry in South Africa at 24% of GDP, followed by personal services at 17%, trade at 14%, manufacturing at 13%, mining government 9%, transport at 7%. The costs of doing nothing will be too dire, but the benefits of regulation far outweigh its costs when regulators and regulatory supervision act in the public interest. Lastly, as part of the overarching reforms, the committee still awaits and urges the minister to prioritize the tabling of the conduct of financial institutions bill, which will, among other things, consolidate and strengthen market conduct laws, protect customers against weak and harmful market practices, promote financial inclusion and financial sector transformation. I move for the adoption of the report. Cancer.
Honorable Nokolo Abraham Siabo. The next speaker from the DA, the Honorable J.N. de Villiers.
Chairperson, thank you. 14 years ago, in 2008, I was working as a shopping center manager in Stellenbosch. I was 28 years old at the time, and I will, it was a bit young and it was a bit rough, but I was called into the boardroom by the owner of the mall, and he told us, and it was 16 September 2008, he told us that last night the world changed, and he was referring to the fall of the American bank, Lehman Brothers. And he was quite right, because the collapse of that bank started the 2008 financial recession. So the full story behind the 2008 recession is complex and intriguing, but the most important key takeaway from that recession is that the American financial institutions got reckless with cheap loans, specifically called subprime home loans to consumers, which basically meant they were lending people money who couldn't afford to be lent money. At that stage, normal people, as well as banks and other institutions got into deep trouble because as inflation rose, people were unable to pay back their loans, and that started the crash and the financial recession. It is worth mentioning that in this time, South African financial institutions were mostly not guilty of these reckless lending standards, but nonetheless, it became very apparent that regulation in the financial sector remains important to safeguard people against the future potential economic recessions that could be brought on by reckless financial institutions and their behavior. And so South Africa adopted, as previous speakers referred to as well, the Twin Peaks model to ensure better financial market regulation and fair and transparent financial markets. And that, Chairperson, is why we are here today. To create better financial regulation, it was first necessary to create the regulating bodies responsible in South Africa. So these are the Prudential Authority, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, the Corporation for Deposit Insurance, the Financial Services Tribunal, the Ombuds Council, the Office of the Pension Funds Adjudicator, and the FAIS Ombud. So this bill before us today seeks to raise the levies issued to fund the operations of these different regulators. The financial industry is being levied already. So this bill will not only raise these levies, but they will also include a special levy. Chairperson, I think it is important at this stage to note that the DA does support the regulation of the financial sector, and we agree that it is in line with international best practice. Ultimately, it does protect South African consumers, and it can encourage healthy economic growth. Chair, there are, however, two principles at play here in this bill which we cannot support. Firstly, as all consumers know, we are already in a time of rising prices and hyperinflation. These increased levies on financial institutions, no matter what they say, will just get worked back into the pockets of normal South Africans and will be priced into the financial services that we all use, banks, insurers, pension funds. So although the financial services sector is being levied, in practice, the consumer is paying for that increase, 1.6 billion rand of increases. These costs not only hurt the pocket of the existing banking, insurance, and financial services, they directly go to the pockets of the consumer. Chairperson, it's a simple concept and a principle. In a time of rising interest rates and alarming inflation, in a country riddled by poverty, inequality, and unemployment, a caring government does not raise costs and levies to consumers when they can least afford it. A caring government does the opposite. It looks toward measures that can help consumers survive. Measures such as slashing the exorbitant 33% taxes on fuel levies and not increasing regulatory levies that get passed on to consumers. And that is why the DA has called for an urgent Parliament debate to slash fuel prices, which will be heard in the House on the 15th of June. South Africans simply cannot afford never-ending rises in fuel, taxes, and levies. But Chair, there's a second principle at play in this bill which we cannot support, and that is the principle of transparency. During the presentation of this bill before the Standing Committee of Finance, much time was spent on how important regulation of a financial sector is and the important role and function of these regulators and how it will not hurt the consumer. We received estimates on the financial impact of these costs on banks, insurers, pension funds, and other financial institutions themselves, but take note, not on the actual impact or feasibility of these costs on consumers who will ultimately pay for them. So although we know how much money will approximately be levied from consumers towards the regulators, the one thing that regulators failed to explain to the committee was exactly how this money will be spent. Not a single budget was put from these regulators, what was put before the committee. or any information that could put light on what is it that this will actually be used for, operational expenses. So as Parliament, we have no idea how these increases in the revenue via the raised levies will be applied because we have not seen the budgets for these entities. The DA cannot support a bill that raises levies from the pockets of normal South Africans to fund increased expenditure of regulators that have not even tried to justify these increases with transparent budgets. So, Chair, although the DA supports the regulation of the financial sector, it's the timing and the transparency of this bill that concerns us. What we cannot support is that in a time when government should care enough about South Africans to try and curb the rising costs of living, the government is instead passing bills that raises the cost of living. This is a symptom of a government that simply does not care. The DA cannot and will not support this bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. From the EFF, I'm told it will be Honourable Mauta.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, the Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Bill and the Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Levies Administration and Deposit Insurance Premium Bills are bills intended to collect levies from the financial sector to finance the operation of the Prudent Authority, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, the Corporation for Deposit Insurance, and other state entities responsible for overseeing the financial sector. The two bills are products of the Financial Sector Regulation Act passed by the National Assembly in 2017, the bill known by most in the financial sector as the Twin Peaks Bill. The Economic Freedom Fighters rejected the Twin Peaks Bill because it failed to deal with the issue of the National Credit Regulator, and we warned that the legislation is ill-conceived and leaves out a key player in financial services. In general, the overall financial sector regulation framework leaves out a key sector of financial services. It is illogical and stupid that we have a national credit regulator that is excluded from the financial sector framework, but is at the center of the struggles for millions of our people who are highly indebted. There was no interest in protecting customers and dealing decisively with reckless lending. We have a loan shark in the form of Capitec that is continuing with reckless lending, chasing high risk for quick returns and an inflated share price. We also raised the issue of Insolvency Act to address the process of sequestration and how people are declared insolvent to be investigated much more properly. Workers are abused by court processes that favor those with money to be sequestrated and sometimes declared insolvent without their knowledge. But there's another problem that we as economic freedom fighters want, that the Financial Sector Regulation Act is going to fail to deal with, and that's the financial crimes. We know that people are stashing millions of dollars under mattresses as part of money laundering schemes. What is the point of regulating the financial sector if the financial sector is colluding with the people involved in illicit financial flows and there's no law to deal with this decisively? How can one person keep $4 to $8 million under a mattress and a sofa, as the president did in his Pala farm, while claiming to have safe and sound financial stability? What is shocking is the fact that the president is not even ashamed to admit that he's keeping US dollars bills under his mattress. The president is sleeping on top of millions of US dollars under his mattress, yet he cannot pay his own workers. We're not going to tolerate a constitutional delinquent who hides behind multiple personalities while pretending to be Mr. Clean, protected by captured financial sector regulatory bodies. The bills before this House today have nothing to do with workers, consumers of financial products, or saving money from the fiscus. These are deals between regulatory agencies that have taken over, and the financial sector, which is owned and run by the white capitalist establishment. Banks and other financial sector role players are expected to pay levies so that there is money to pay the salaries of workers in these regulatory bodies. This compromises the independence of an already compromised and captured regulatory framework. The most appropriate manner of handling this would have been to charge them levies to the fiscus and allow Parliament to pass an appropriation on an annual basis to all financial sector regulatory bodies. The EFF rejected the Levies Bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I am tempted to make a request that we should refrain from lowering the gravity of our presentations by using language that might create tensions. Words such as stupid and others, while the presentation is very good, and so on. So it's just a humble plea. So cala umhlonishwa undaba ezintsha iEmbuthelezi. Honorable Chief Whip, the IFP.
It would seem, Honorable Chairperson, that Honorable Buthelezi is having some connectivity problem. May I proceed with these remarks? Thank you very much. Honorable Chairperson, at the outset, I wish to thank the Standing Committee on Finance for scrutinizing the Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Levies Bill and the Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Levies Admin Bill as tabled. We also express our gratitude for the oral submissions made and clause-by-clause definitions as outlined by role players in the financial sector. Honorable Chairperson, the main objectives of financial sector regulations are to ensure a stable, inclusive, and transformed financial sector that is a key driver of economic growth and job creation. The financial sector plays an important role of providing financial products and services to citizens. We fully support any legislation that will increase economic activity while protecting consumers, depositors, and all players within the insurance and financial sectors. However, it must be noted by this House that while South Africa is not short of any comprehensive financial sector regulations and legislation, it is the people and key role players in the sector that seek to circumvent the legislation for their own gain. We have many great pieces of legislation, but not many great people who are entrusted to enforce the laws and regulations as pertains to the financial sector. It is imperative, therefore, that we clamp down on corruption and cover any and all loopholes that may exist within the system so as to prevent any forms of exploitation. Honorable Chairperson, the IFP further notes that these bills are part of a suite of measures aimed at financial sector reforms, which were necessitated by the global financial sector reforms following the global financial crisis of 2008. The IFP, therefore, Chairperson, will support the reports by the Standing Committee on Finance and the bill, having considered the Insurance Levies Bill with its recommendations and findings, as well as those pertaining to the Financial Sector and Deposit Insurance Levies Admin Bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. From the ACDP, Honorable Swap.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP would also like to thank the members of the Portfolio Committee for the incredible hard work on these two very complex pieces of legislation. As we know, the financial sector is a key driver of economic growth and job creation in the country. It plays an important role of providing financial products and services to citizens and thus supports economic growth. And the efficient and effective regulation and supervision of financial institutions and markets minimizes the risk of market failures, as was seen in the 2008 global financial crisis referred to by previous speakers. The ACDP shares the view that the strong system of financial sector regulation will ensure the protection of financial customers, given, as other speakers have indicated, that finances is the largest industry in South Africa, 24% of GDP. Now, the ACDP also notes that during the public hearings, the stakeholders were deeply concerned about the compliance costs. And I think this is at the heart of the problem, how to balance the benefit to the consumers with the increased compliance costs. The stakeholders also indicated that the bills would create barriers for entry for new players, would lead to a low penetration in the market and limit competition. And again, these will all lead to increased costs. So we've listened very carefully to the debates of these previous speakers. And the concerns are, of course, as indicated in the committee's reports, that firstly, whilst it obtained a socioeconomic impact study on the Levies Bill, it felt that it was necessary that an independent survey be conducted to examine the actual pass-on costs of the levies to consumers after a reasonable time after they have been collected. So clearly, that figure, whilst 300 million is spoken about, at present 1.6 billion per annum being the cost, 1.3 billion increasing to 1.6 billion. The concern is the pass-on costs shared by all members of the committee, and how will that be established given the fact that we've already got an increase in fuel levies, we've got an increase in interest rates, we've got an increase in inflation. And I think what also tipped the balance for the ACDP was the fact of transparency, as mentioned by previous speakers, that at this stage, we do not know what the regulator actually requires and what the regulator, how the regulator will spend these funds. If we had a proper budget from the regulator and to justify those expenditure, maybe we would have been keener to support this bill. But we want to emphasize that we support the regulation and the supporting of consumers, but until we know specifically how these funds will be spent by the regulators, we unfortunately are unable to support these bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Swart. Do you have a person from the ATM? A member from the ATM? NFP? NFP? AIC? Pope? Al-Jama? The next speaker from the ANC, the Honorable J. Sikosan.
Yathokoza sihlalo ohloniphekileko, malunga ahloniphekileko, sizwe sakwethu lotshani. The importance of the levies and levies administration bills, whilst raising additional financing to operate regulatory institutions in the financial sector, has more to do with the ongoing correction of economic activities within the financial sector. We were not surprised when in 2008, following the worst forms of insider trading, banks in the United States began to collapse, triggered by a conscious manipulation of the prime lending rate in housing bond market, especially amongst working class, Black and lower income workers, selling bonds that the traders knew full well the working class could not afford. This led to a global economic crisis, last witnessed in 1929, which resulted in millions of job losses globally, and in South Africa, approximately 1.4 million jobs being lost as a result. It demonstrated once again that a poorly regulated financial sector is a huge danger to any economy, and the potential of a poorly regulated financial sector can easily lead to massive job losses, a negative impact upon growth, and greater instability in society. The South African economy has been financialized like most global economies. Most component parts of our economy are integrated with the financial sector, and the financial sector in turn has a dominating influence on the character and shape of the economy. Given the modus operandi of the financial sector, which has the ability to extract high levels of accumulation, shift money in and out of the country rapidly, and extract levies on the bank, regulating the financial sector is critical for the state. The state has to ensure that the financial sector adds value to the economy and does not create distortions in the economy, economic bubbles, and other practices that are serving rent-seeking behavior. 2008 found South Africa relatively better insulated than other countries, thanks to the regulatory environment that had been introduced by the National Treasury. What it did, however, like in many countries, was to trigger greater regulatory intervention in the financial sector to the credit of the National Treasury. The Financial Sector Regulation Bill, introduced in Parliament in 2015, was enacted in 2017. It was followed by the enactment of the Insurance Act of 2017. The Financial Sector Regulation Act of 2017 headlined the regulatory reforms and introducing a new model of financial regulations. This model of financial regulation is a comprehensive system for regulating the financial sector and dealing with practices where goods or assets are bought in one market and sold in another because the rate of return derived is higher. Parliament has been central to this process, and the Finance Committee over the years has played an important role in shaping legislation. Malunga Hloniphekileko, what the Financial Sector Regulation Act did was to introduce two main regulatory authorities, which are the Prudential Authority within the South African Reserve Bank and the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. The Prudential Authority is responsible for the safety and soundness of banks, insurers, and financial conglomerates, and the Financial Sector Conduct Authority is responsible for protecting customers from financial firms trying to ensure some levels of integrity within the system of accumulation, as well as efficiency of financial market and promoting effective consumer education. Last year, we passed the Financial Sector Laws Amendment Bill, which established the Corporation for Deposit Insurance and Deposit Insurance Fund. Importantly, this, for the first time, seek to ensure that depositors are protected in the event of a bank failure. This we have seen in recent times where the Prudential Authority of the Reserve Bank has had to intervene. In order to financially sustain this work, an appropriate funding model is needed to provide for the cost of regulation. The Levies Bills seek to ensure that there is adequate funding and resources of regulators and supervisors. The financial sector requires regulatory resources proportional to its centrality as a result of the dependence of the entire economy on the sector, as well as its size in relation to the economy. Now, the 6 regulatory authorities currently cost about 1.6 billion rands to run. And the National Treasury, through these bills, seeks to raise a further 290 million rands, taking the actual cost to 1.6 billion rands per annum. Now, the ANC's approach was firstly to state that the responsibility to cover the extra 290 million rands must lie within the financial sector itself, since it is the very practices of the financial sector that require oversight and regulations. Secondly, we argued that the principle of cross-subsidization must apply. This principle is applicable in other parts of our economy and underpins the redistributive nature of any democratic society. Thirdly, we wanted to know, what does this mean for the bank, you and I? Are we going to be called upon to carry a disproportionate amount of the extra financial burden? Malunga Hloniphekileko, we insisted that a socio-economic impact assessment be brought to the committee to determine where the responsibility to finance the bills lay. That study showed that the cost to the bank will be less than 50 cents per month. I think one of the members from the DA are listening. The cost for the bank will be less than 50 cents per month. So we believe that for the bank, this is affordable. Now, notwithstanding that, we recommended that an independent survey be conducted to examine the actual pass-on cost of the levies to consumers after a reasonable period of time after they have been collected. Oversight over the regulatory environment is also critical. So for the 6 major banks, they will need to pay about 45 million rands per annum on a sliding scale for smaller banks down to 53,000 rands per annum. Same sliding scale for bigger insurance companies who on average will pay about 15 million rand per annum down to the small entrants at about 50,000 rand per annum. So we welcome the fact that there are exemptions for those parts of the financial sector who can least afford it, and that your cooperative banks will only pay on a sliding scale from 5 million rand per annum downwards, and your village banks and other forms of banking are exempt. So it is on those bases that as the ANC, we support both financial sector debt insurance levies bills. Well, we understand why the DA will not support it. It is on the basis that these levies are aimed at assisting institutions like the Prudential Authority and the FSCA, which are institutions that service the poorest of the poor and the most vulnerable. And those are not part of the constituency of the DA. So if the aim of the bill was to service big companies, the DA was going to support. But because it services this institution, which in the main are servicing the poorest of the poor, obviously the DA will not support. Well, I'm disappointed with the EFF because the EFF, they always cry the loudest when they speak about the need to transform the financial sector and to regulate it. But here they are today rejecting this bill. But we know them, that's how they are. They are always having some pie in the sky ideas tested anywhere in the world. That's how they are. So we're not surprised. So as the ANC, Honorable Chair, we support this financial sector debt insurance levies bill. Ngiyathokoza.
Chair. That's a point of order, honorable member. Member Mautwe just called on the member Mashangu to shut up. Is that
I was responding to him. He said to me, I must shut up first. You must listen, Wanapabo.
Even
yeah, don't be biased, Wanapabo. Don't be biased. Don't be biased. That's why taking all people to parliament is a problem. Don't be biased. You said before to TG, and then you stood up there and then defending your own person. We're going to defend
shut up,
man.
Shut up, man.
Shut up. Oh, we're not going to allow this bullying here. This is bullying.
And you're out of order.
Yes, sir.
Honorable members, that was totally uncalled for. Members have a right to raise points of orders. Members have a right to object to whatever. But slinging like that, I don't think it's acceptable. Let us refrain from using words such as shut up and all that. It's unparliamentary. And just shouting at the top of your voice in a mic the way some members do is terrible. It's totally unacceptable. I say I did not want to usher in the Minister of Finance like that. Honorable Minister.
Kuba power, Chair. Mukubi, Kuala please, we're busy.
Honorable Mautwe, please. Honorable, the Honorable the Minister of Finance.
Honorable House Chair, I want to say 3 things. The first one, in the management of public finances, there are trade-offs and policy choices. The unfortunate part is that our colleagues on my left, this side, are in a comfortable position because they don't have to make these policy choices and trade-offs. Let me just use it as an example. Even if you have got to choose between a levy to finance these institutions, if it's not a levy, I'll have to tax somebody in order to finance them. There's not two ways about it. Those are the policy choices I've got to make. If tomorrow you use the fuel levy I've made my intention that if you ask me, I like the fuel levy, I don't. If you ask me, do I have an intention to phase it out? Yes. But can I do it at the stroke of a pen? No. Why? The fuel levy, as we speak, generates about 89 billion rand per annum. If I were to remove it immediately, I'll have to find a new tax to replace it, or cut services. And in most circumstances, those services that are going to be cut are likely to affect the poor of the poorest. These are policy choices you make when you are in government. Unfortunately, our colleagues on the left don't have to make those policy choices every day. Every day you've got to make these policy choices. That's what we live with. That's what it then has got to do with the responsibility of governing, is to make those policy choices. I also made my intention that also as part of moving forward, even the road accident fund has got to be moved out of the fuel levy, of the fuel price. But that needs a process. The second point I want to make is the regulatory aspect of it, but oversight there's oversight possibility, which every day these regulatory institutions are going to do. Lastly, I must thank the committee for the job well done. Thank you.
Are there any objections to the financial sector and deposit insurance levies bill being read a first time?
Please note the objection of the Democratic Alliance.
Objection noted.
Also, please note the objection of the EFF, Chair.
And of the Freedom Front Plus, please.
And of the ACDP, thank you.
Noted, honorable members. Report agreed to. Thank you very much. The secretary will read the bill the first time.
Financial sector and deposit insurance levies bill.
Are there any objections to the financial sector and deposit insurance levies administration and deposit insurance premiums bill being read a second time? Noted, honorable member.
And also of the Freedom Front Plus, Chair.
Noted,
and the ACDP, thank
you. Report agreed to. The secretary will read the bill a second time.
Financial sector and deposit insurance levies administration and deposit insurance premiums bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The secretary will read the fifth order.
Second reading, financial sector and deposit insurance levies bill.
As there is no speakers list, are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? Noted, honorable member.
And that of the Freedom Front Plus, Chairperson.
And the ACDP, thank you, Chairperson.
Noted, honorable members.
EFF, please, Chairperson.
Noted, honorable member. The secretary will read the bill a second time.
Financial sector and deposit insurance levies bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The secretary will read the last order of the day.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services on removal from office of Ms. J.F. van Schalkwyk, Chief Magistrate at Kempton Park, in terms of Section 13(4) of the Magistrates Act 1993.
I will now call upon the Honorable G. Makwanisha from the vision.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson, honorable ministers, honorable deputy ministers, honorable members. Ms. van Schalkwyk holds the position of Chief Magistrate at Kempton Park. She was provisionally suspended from office in 2013 on charges of misconduct, pending the outcome of an investigation into her fitness to hold office. Although the formal inquiry began in 2014, the process was delayed by several postponements and changes to council. In 2015, Ms. van Schalkwyk applied for an order concerning the validity of regulations for judicial officers in the lower courts and a code of conduct for magistrates, but was unsuccessful. Also, leave to appeal was refused. In 2018, Parliament confirmed the minister's determination, as recommended by the Magistrates Commission, to withhold her remuneration. The inquiry was eventually held in September 2020, and Ms. van Schalkwyk was found guilty. The Commission recommended her removal from office on the 27th of July 2021. The minister confirmed the recommendation. The committee was briefed on the matter on the 26th of August 2021. At the meeting, the committee heard that Ms. van Schalkwyk had applied to court to have the Commission's decision to recommend her removal from office set aside. The committee requested a legal opinion and was advised that there was no legal reason preventing Parliament from proceeding with the matter. On the 31st May 2022, the committee was briefed by the Commission and also considered the contents of Ms. van Schalkwyk's correspondence. The committee is of the view that there is no justifiable basis in law for it to postpone its deliberations. Furthermore, Ms. van Schalkwyk holds a senior position within the magistracy, and the suspension prevents the position from being filled on a permanent basis to the detriment of the administration of justice. The committee, having considered the report from the Magistrates Commission, the minister's suspension and removal of Ms. van Schalkwyk from office of magistrate, reports that it concurs with the suspension and recommends that the National Assembly resolves not to restore Ms. van Schalkwyk to office. I so move. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration. The usual times for declaration of votes will apply. DA.
Thank you, House Chair. The administration of justice in our country is under severe pressure. It's under the type of pressure, House Chair, that is not good for the health of either the judiciary or the health of our constitutional democracy. One element of this pressure turns on the fact that the Department of Justice has clearly not escaped the operational decline and inefficiencies that typifies governance by the ANC. Another element of this pressure is brought about by the way in which the rule of law is being undermined in our country through criminality which is not investigated and prosecuted properly. But also, Chair, importantly for this report, through a failure to act with integrity on the part of holders of public office, and even an attitude by some holders of public office that the law does not apply equally to everyone, as determined by our Constitution, from the president at the top of the country right down to the poorest and the marginalized. While the manner in which we as the national legislature discharges of our duties and functions in terms of the Constitution is often criticized, today is a good opportunity to embrace our obligations to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law. This report is the product of the Portfolio Committee of Justice's oversight of the process followed of the decision reached by the Magistrates Commission and the Minister in response to allegations of impropriety and misconduct on the part of a senior member of the magistracy, the Chief Magistrate of Kempton Park. In this regard, it must firstly be repeated that it remains a concern that disciplinary matters involving members of the judiciary are often not finalized with anything that resembles speed or alacrity. The failure to deal efficiently with matters of discipline invariably holds the potential to undermine the trust and confidence of the public in the judiciary as an institution. The fact that charges faced by Magistrate van Schalkwyk stems from events that took place prior to 2013 already can never be deemed as good enough. While any magistrate who stands to lose office, of course, must enjoy all the rights and privileges inherent to a fair process, the reality is that ordinary people might view this as proof that holders of public office are treated more carefully than them when it comes to workplace misconduct. Having said this, Chair, in the current matter, it is quite clear that the delay in finalization of this matter was primarily caused by the charged magistrate and not by the Magistrates Commission or the Minister. Secondly, our decision today must be informed by the firm view that in order for our constitutional democracy and the rule of law to withstand the pressure it's being put under, we have no choice but to demand the highest level of integrity, honesty, and probity from members of the judiciary. In respect of the charges on which Magistrate van Schalkwyk was found guilty, we are satisfied that removal from office is justified. No reasons could be found to restore Magistrate van Schalkwyk to office. Finally, Chair, the Portfolio Committee, as the Chair of the committee indicated, did consider delaying a final decision on this matter, given that Magistrate van Schalkwyk is subjecting the process and decision by the Commission and the Minister to judicial review. However, we agree that it is in the interest of justice and specifically the administration of justice to finalize this decision, as the administration of justice will never be optimal in a situation where only an acting chief magistrate is in place for years on end. Given that Magistrate van Schalkwyk has been suspended from office without remuneration some years ago already, our finalization of this matter on the information available to us at this stage cannot be prejudicial in any way. We support the report and the recommendation not to restore to office. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. It is now almost 10 years since the initial complaints against Magistrate van Schalkwyk were laid. It is sad indictment that it has taken institutions tasked with holding judicial officers such as the magistrates this long to bring the matter to finality. The integrity of the judiciary is placed under unnecessary strain by delays such as this matter, and the country should find ways of expediting complaints against judicial officers to enable our courts, particularly lower courts, to function without having these dark clouds hovering over it. We must also condemn the delaying tactics employed by Ms. van Schalkwyk throughout this ordeal. Her conduct has tainted the image of the judiciary and is offensive to the code of conduct of judicial officers. Ms. van Schalkwyk was accused of many despicable offenses relating to abuse of her powers as chief magistrate, and these included attending to personal business during working hours, borrowing money from subordinates, gambling during working hours, and asking a magistrate to drive her to a casino at 10 a.m. We must also understand that the nature of her offenses point to a psychological problem she might have with gambling. Magistrates work under extremely difficult conditions, and the Department of Justice and the Magistrates Commission must have a mental health assistance readily available to magistrates. It must also not be easy to dismiss people without having made available of all kinds of manner of assistance to them, particularly when the conditions of their work may easily have contributed to their conduct. This, however, does not take away the responsibility for magistrates to conduct themselves in a manner befitting of the esteemed office they occupy in the country's justice system. So therefore, as the EFF, we are in support of the committee's decision to approve the removal of this magistrate from office. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. IFK.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Once again, somebody who was supposed to be on virtual is not there. It is critical, Honourable Chairperson, that judicial officers, as custodians of justice and the rule of law, are held to the highest standard of ethics. The public needs to have faith that our courts are led by people with integrity and with the competence that an officer of the court will always conduct themselves in an ethical manner. On consideration of the report, the IFP from the outset wishes to raise its concern that this matter has been prolonged for many years due to various legal challenges raised by Ms. van Schalkwyk. The Magistrates Commission apparently charged Ms. van Schalkwyk with various counts of misconduct in May 2013 already, pending an investigation into her fitness to hold office in terms of the Magistrates Act. It is clear, however, from the report that it is a submission of the Portfolio Committee that due process had been followed in the misconduct proceeding and that both Ms. van Schalkwyk and the Commission have been given the opportunity to submit evidence before a presiding officer in September 2020. It is our understanding that the presiding officer found Ms. van Schalkwyk guilty on 13 of the 22 remaining counts of misconduct against her, and accordingly recommended that she be removed from office in terms of Section 13 of the Magistrates Act. And this was confirmed by the Minister. The IFP, however, understands that the Portfolio Committee has, in accordance with the legal opinion on the matter, determined that there is no legal basis preventing the committee from deliberating on the matter, despite a pending review application of the Commission's decision. The committee, therefore, on 31 May 2022, determined that the suspension of Ms. van Schalkwyk prevents a critical senior position in the magistracy from being filled. This is only to the detriment of justice. The Portfolio Committee subsequently recommended that the National Assembly resolve not to restore Ms. van Schalkwyk to office. In conclusion, the IFP wishes to stress the importance of acting swiftly on complaints of misconduct by judicial officers, as the legitimacy of our courts rests on the shoulders of these officers. The IFP accepts the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable C. FF plus.
Honorable House Chair, accountability is a foundational value of our democracy, which is applicable to all, including the judiciary. Judicial independence serves as a safeguard for the rights and privilege provided by a limited constitution. It prevents executive and legislative encroachment above those rights. Judicial accountability is a set of mechanisms aimed at making magistrates and courts personally or institutionally responsible for behaviors and decisions contrary to the Constitution or legal standards. The Freedom Front Plus is in this instance in favor of the suspension and removal of Mrs. J.F. van Schalkwyk from the office of Magistrate in terms of Section 13(4) of the Magistrates Act. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP at the outset would like to thank all members of the judiciary who tirelessly dispense justice on a day-to-day basis. They are under tremendous pressure given the high levels of crime and backlogs that they are faced with in the courts. However, members of judiciary must be held to the highest level of probity, of integrity, given that they dispense justice and citizens correctly look up to them for that justice. So it is highly regrettable that this matter dealing with a chief magistrate has taken so long, emanating from events from 2013, 2014. And the ACDP understands that this is no fault of the Commission or the Minister. Chairperson, I served on the Magistrates Commission for many years, and I understand the delaying tactics which the Commission has referred to in its report as well. And everyone is entitled to litigate and go to court, but this is what we have seen here. So, Chairperson, the ACDP has considered this report in the Justice Portfolio Committee. We support the report and the recommendation not to restore the Magistrate van Schalkwyk to office, given the fact that we're dealing with a chief magistrate here and that someone else has had to perform this task to the detriment of justice for the citizens. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Swart. UDM. ATM. Good. NFP. AIC. COPE. PAC. Al-Jamaa. ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. Members of the House, fellow South Africans. The ANC supports the report on the removal from office of Ms. J.F. van Schalkwyk. Strong perceptions of corruption and misconduct undermine the reputation of the magistrates. Numerous pieces of law emphasize that judicial officers must always be above reproach. The overall constitutional standard for the appointment of judicial officers is that they must be fit and proper. This is in addition to the requirement that they must be suitable, qualified. A fit and proper judicial officer must embody judicial integrity. The standards of judicial integrity are articulated in the norms and standards for the performance of judiciary functions. The Code of Judicial Conduct for Magistrates in terms of Section 16, subsection 1 of the Magistrates Act 1993, the Code of Judicial Conduct adopted in terms of Section 12 of the Judicial Service Commission Act of 1994, and numerous other standards at international level, such as the Bangla principles. Inter alia, these standards include that a judicial officer must always, and not only in the discharge of official duties, act honorably and in a manner befitting the judicial office. There are clear standards on judicial officers needs to avoid conflicts between their private interests and that of their judicial office. There is also an obligation on judicial officers to uphold the dignity, reputation, and esteem of the judiciary. Ms. van Schalkwyk is a chief magistrate at Kempton Park, Johannesburg, was charged with 18 counts of misconduct. The Magistrates Commission agreed to provisionally suspend Ms. van Schalkwyk pending an investigation into her fitness to hold office as contemplated in terms of Section 13, subsection 3A of Magistrates Act number 90 of 1993. The minister provisionally suspended her from office on the 4th June 2013, and Parliament confirmed Ms. van Schalkwyk provisional suspension from office in November 2013. On 18 September 2013, the Commission appointed a presiding officer and a person to lead the evidence at the hearing, informing Ms. van Schalkwyk in writing. The misconduct inquiry was postponed several times at the request of the defense and to allow the defense an opportunity to file an application at the High Court challenging the validity of the regulations for judicial officers and the Code of Conduct for Magistrates, and for the state to oppose the application. The misconduct inquiry against Ms. van Schalkwyk was kept in abeyance pending the finalization of the application. The application was heard on the 15th March 2017, and a judgment was reserved. On 1st August 2017, the High Court delivered its judgment and dismissed the application with cost. The applicant filed a notice of application for leave to appeal on 29 August 2017, but having heard both parties on 8 November 2017, the High Court dismissed the application with cost on the 10th November 2017. The Commission was of the view that Ms. van Schalkwyk was deliberately delaying the disciplinary process against her and determined to withhold Ms. van Schalkwyk remuneration in terms of Section 13(4)(a) capital and A of the Act with immediate effect, pending the conclusion of the disciplinary inquiry against her. Subsequently, having considered the minister's report on the matter, Parliament resolved to confirm the determination to withhold Ms. van Schalkwyk remuneration. Despite numerous challenges encountered during the misconduct proceedings, evidence was eventually led and both parties were given the opportunity to submit their respective heads of argument on the merits and orally amplify them before the presiding officer on the 17th and 18th September 2020. Ms. van Schalkwyk elected not to testify at the inquiry. The presiding officer postponed the inquiry to 1st and 2nd October 2020 for judgment and imposing of a sanction. The presiding officer delivered his judgment and found Ms. van Schalkwyk guilty on 13 of 22 remaining counts of misconduct preferred against her. In line with the Audi alteram partem rule of natural justice, both parties were given an opportunity to present any aggravating or mitigating factors to him on the imposing of an appropriate sanction. The presiding officer recommended that Ms. van Schalkwyk to be removed from office as contemplated in Section 13 of the Magistrate Act. Having considered all the relevant documentation, the Commission resolved to recommend that Ms. van Schalkwyk be removed from office on the ground of misconduct. On the 27th July 2021, the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services confirmed the removal from office. Ms. van Schalkwyk holds a senior position within the magistrates, and the suspension prevents the position from being filled on a permanent basis to the detriment of the administration of justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. The people of South Africa deserve speedy delivery of justice. Therefore, ANC support the report. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the adoption of the report of the committee, including the recommendation that the provisional suspension from office of Magistrate J.F. van Schalkwyk be confirmed? No objections, agreed to. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.
Long live the chair.